Hello and welcome. Today we're going to get into some tips and techniques for best practices for aroma fusion protocols. And so, whether you've worked with essential oils or not in the past, if you have a ton of essential oils and you're just adding on to your repertoire, just allow these techniques to sort of enhance maybe what you've already been doing or to recalibrate some of the ways that you've been approaching your use with essential oils. So first and foremost, it's always important to use a high quality oil. And if you've been following me for a while, you know that I love and almost exclusively use the Monara brand in our Venture Well Spa. We've got some displayed here that our clients pick up after their treatments. It's not to say that this is the best brand on the market, but it's one that I've come to trust. I know the owner personally, and she's the one that has taught me all of these protocols that we use or most of the protocols that we use in our Aroma Fusion. I also know her nature and where these oils come from. And to me, that's a really important part. As an herbalist, I know that we have endangered plant species on this planet. And when it comes to using essential oils, that there is an incredible amount of ethical nature that needs to be considered. Something as precious as rose. We see rose everywhere in the world, but it takes 40 pounds of roses to make one bottle of essential oil. So you better believe that when you're buying a high quality bottle of rose oil, if you're getting the true unadulterated version of rose, that it's going to be quite expensive. And so just know, if you're just getting started in your aromatherapy and aroma fusion, that you can go slowly. You don't need to invest thousands of dollars in oils right away. There's really beautiful things that you can begin to do with just a few oils and a few points to really begin to bring that optimal balance into your everyday world. But again, sourcing and building a trust with a brand that's high quality, ethical in nature, and really kind of has a mission statement that aligns for you is the first thing that I really want you to consider. And if you are curious about the Monara brand, since this is the product I tend to talk about a lot, and we'll have all the oils that I do bring into our sessions, you can find more information about them down in the link below. I do offer an affiliate link there, so it's like shopping local with a small business, and then you get to use our promo code for free shipping as well. So that's all I'm going to say about that. The other part that I want to talk about is that when you're looking for an oil specifically around aroma fusion, when we use oils topically, again, because they are a really dense compound of the plant matter that was extracted, we want to think about over long-term use that they can cause some irritations at times. I've never personally had that. I used oils neat, as we call it, for years on the surface of my skin. But I would just say best practices would be to look for an oil that either is diluted or that you can dilute. Here in the spa, I have some that are neat, and so I just have a fractionated coconut oil sitting there with a pump that I can easily just put a little bit on my palm, on my finger, and then pour the oil on that before I apply it to somebody's skin. So just consider that if you're just looking to solely use these products for aroma fusion for topical use, you may want to look at something. For example, these are held in jojoba oil, and then they tell the percent of the oil versus the carrier oil that's in them, which I feel is really nice because then you really know transparency of what you're getting. And these are calibrated to really work with the energetics of the body and the points that we tend to do as well. So let's also talk about the topical application of the oils. So when we are talking about aroma fusion, we're often, not always, but we're often talking about finding a spot, holding the oil there. And so if you've ever experienced acupuncture or acupressure, which some of these protocols come straight from the lineage of traditional Chinese medicine, you'll know that oftentimes pressure, or in some instances a needle, is actually applied. And so we think about the deeper, the harder, the firmer, the better. And in a lot of acupressure protocols, there is actually like palpations and movement around of energy that you're wanting to do. And what I will say with that is, in those instances, those are the conduit. Those are the applicators of how we're asking energy to move, right? Whether it's through a needle, you're piercing that point with the needle, and the needle's helping to run the energy there, or your finger is running the energy and you're palpating and moving. In this instance, we're using oils, and so the oils are really the conduit for shifts and change in the body. So really our finger is just the tool to apply those oils. And so when you think about, well, how hard do I press? I want you to just find a surface of your skin and press down really hard and notice the slight color change that happens. Then I want you to find the touch where the color change doesn't happen. And that's about how hard you're going to press once the oil is on your finger. Again, the oil is doing the work. You're not doing the work, you're receiving the work. So just keep that into consideration when you're watching any of the future videos. Let me see, what else did I want to share here? Okay, so when we're doing these points, you'll often hear me waiting for the shift, noticing what you notice, noticing any of the sensations that are happening. If we're new to body work, if we're new to healing modalities, we may not always have that awareness of like, what does that actually mean? Or we may get to a point where there's a lot of subtlety that's happening. We might not notice a change until all of a sudden we've done a digestion point and we're like, oh, everything's moving just fine. There's a lot of subtleness that goes here. And so a good rule of thumb for how long you hold a point or work with the oil in a particular placement or routine is usually 1 to 3 minutes. And so it's not just apply and go. We want to create a sense of a moment for you that you really are in the receiving mode. If you're, in a quick, I've talked often about putting jasmine here and then running out the door, right? I do tend to just take a moment to acknowledge that oil coming to the surface of my skin, and then sometimes I will move about my day and trusting that the energy that I put into that. But really, if you're sitting down and giving yourself and honoring a few moments for yourself, it's really beautiful to be able to sit for at least 1 minute with each oil. Or again, when you get to start to understand how these oils and these points are working for you, when you notice that shift. Sometimes that shift can look like a little twinge or a twitch, different parts of the body, even unrelated to the point. If you're doing a liver point, might not mean that your liver is going to gurgle or something. But yawning is a really beautiful symbol of transformation and alchemy happening in the body. I get little burps sometimes when I'm working on people, and it just feels like this off gas that's happening a little bit. But you may notice it in different ways. Tummy's grumbling. You might start to feel the oil that you've been holding for 2 minutes. All of a sudden, it's almost like it wafts up, and it's like it's actually embodied you at that point. So, and you may notice something that I've never noticed that's pretty powerful. So, the other important thing that I want to share is there are a few oils, especially when we're using them topically, that are photosensitizing, meaning that when they are applied, that there is a greater risk of being in sun exposure and creating irritation or burn. Most of our citrus oils would be in that container. So bergamot, for example, which we will put often on this point on Shen Min, which if you don't have long hair like me, can often be exposed. So this is again another reiteration of having them diluted. Often when they're diluted, they're not going to be as photosensitizing, but I would still by default want to put a little extra sunscreen there, or just do these rituals more in the evening. Another one that I've had an experience with that has never necessarily been told to me as photosensitizing, but I know this is a sensitive part of me, so it could be that I could put any oil here and I would have a little bit of an issue. I know for a fact that this one was diluted. But just think about those placements that you have a little bit thinner of skin, or that you've had a lot of sun exposure. I taught yoga outdoors for 10 years, and so this is, an area of my body that tends to radiate and get a lot of sun. It's also really thin skin here. So just always use precaution. If you're putting the oils on, maybe just put extra precaution and put that extra sunscreen on. So one of the other elements that I wanted to mention, and I'm splicing this into our video because it got cut off, but is the way that we actually draw the essential oils out of the vial. And it's really important to me, at least you can find your unique way to do this, but some of these oils, they're going to be really fluid, and they're just going to flow right out of the bottle, and you'll get to know the ones that are ready to flow right away and that you need to slowly pour, where some of our more resinous oils, they might take a moment. But whenever I'm working on clients, I have this beautiful sense of trust that the oil maybe is taking its time. It might be that it needs to find the vibration that it's tuning to with the individual before it comes out. And so I'm sharing this with you. And again, not that this is wrong, but this is just one of the tips and tricks that I'm going to offer you. I've seen a lot of individuals using the application method of just, trying to get the oil out. I feel like there's a little bit of permission that we work with when we work with any plants, and that when the timing is right, it's going to come to us. It doesn't mean that when an oil is really, really taking its time, or maybe it is a little bit stuck on the cap, that I don't use a little bit of agitation to invite it out. But there's a tendency, and I have Rose here again, for myself to have that sense of a patient, that sense of emotion, a moment with the oil to allow it to come out. Rose is a perfect example. There are times where I'm treating a client and it's just taking its time. And if we think about Rose and the innate way that it connects to the heart, sometimes the heart needs a moment to really come into its full resonance. And so I allow it to just take a moment to find that drop. So I don't know how this is going to play out in the moment, but oftentimes Rose does take a moment. And so I really encourage you to kind of just make this part of your experience, part of your protocols, is to pause and to breathe with the oil. And if it takes too long with this oil, being that we're on a video, I hear it coming now. So there it is, right? So it took a little bit of its sweet time, but we have that rose. And just for sample's sake, I'm going to bring that onto the heart, just because we never want to waste any of our precious oils, but especially our precious oils like rose. That does take quite a bit of energy and plant matter to produce. So again, thank you guys so much for joining me today. If you have any questions on any of the tips or the tricks that I did share, please feel free to drop those into the comments. I'll do my best to respond. And of course, if you appreciated this tips and tricks, go ahead and subscribe so that you get to apply them to our future videos. And if you really enjoyed this and want to share this with a friend who could utilize some of these protocols for their own world, feel free to share that up into the world. Otherwise, I will see you all next time. Thank you so much.